So you're thinking about running, but not sure how to take the first step. My name is Brian Patterson, and I'm here to help. Welcome to Brian's Run Pod. Hey there, runners and go-getters. Welcome back to another episode of Brian's Run Pod, and where we lace up our shoes, hit the pavement, and dive into the stories that keep us moving forward. I'm your host, Brian Patterson, and today we've got a really special guest who's taken the art of chasing goals both on and off the track to a whole new level. Join me today to the incredible Hannah Mulhern. She's a retired D1 collegiate basketball player who found a second love in running. Not just for the miles, but for the mental clarity and the life lessons it brings. Hannah's journey is all about transformation, how she traded the corporate grind to the mission to inspire others, and as she puts it, do epic shit today. Hannah's the creator and the host of the Do Epic Shit Today podcast, a space where she shares empowering conversations with runners, entrepreneurs, self-starters. Her goal to remind us that all that we are capable of, way more than we give ourselves credit for. We'll be diving into her story, resilience, discipline, and how running has shaped her approach to life. And maybe, just maybe, she'll inspire you to take the next epic step into your own journey. So grab your headphones, hit the trail, and let's get into it. Hannah, welcome to the podcast.
Wow.
I thought you might like that.
Oh my gosh, that was awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me on. That was
Brilliant.
So beautifully said. Thank you. That intro was lovely.
Thank you. It's all right, no problem. Now, like I do with most of my guests, I kind of like to start right at the beginning, sort of maybe high school. You know, what was your relationship like with exercise and running? I know you're quite tall, so and I know you went to you did basketball at quite a high level at college level. So was exercise always part, about your journey, growing up?
Yeah. So yes, I'm very tall. I'm 6'2". So growing up, I wasn't always I didn't always stick out, but probably more middle school. It was like, okay, there's tall, and then there's Hannah tall. Like, we're talking a full head above everybody else. And so growing up, people kind of saw my mom and recognized my mom is 6 feet, 6'1".
Oh, right.
Recognized. Okay. And my biological father is like 6'4", 6'5". So it was just looking at the two of them and just kind of like, okay, they're probably going to have a tall offspring. So just the given. And with that sort of background, I think a lot of coaches and people that had sports teams kind of kept that in the back of their mind as like, oh, Hannah's going to be really tall. And that sort of put my foot into the assumption that people were going to assume I played a sport. It wasn't like, does Hannah want to play? It's no, she's tall. She's going to play. And luckily for me, I actually really found playing sports quite fun. It was very much what I did after school every day on the weekends. So it was, soccer, t-ball, in like volleyball. I dabbled in horseback riding. So anything to kind of burn off that energy. I was a pretty energetic kid, and my mom was like, let's just put her in a whole bunch of sports because she likes to do that. And, she's fairly athletic, so she's decent there. So sports and, exercise were always something that I grew up doing and felt very comfortable with.
Right.
And then just as I got older and I started just being so much taller than a lot of people, it was just more of, okay. And it was just kind of what basketball just kind of took form, because that's mainly a sport that you see height being a favorable factor. I do think, though, if like a volleyball coach would have gotten to me first, we would have played volleyball. It wasn't like basketball was the end all be all. It was just what my friends were playing. And I had a really passionate basketball coach who was like, you are tall. Let's make you into a weapon. Like, let's go. And like fired me up and saw so much potential.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why basketball took more of the realms there and other sports started to fall off. But yes, to answer your question, exercise has very much been a.
So just to hone in, because I know I've heard of this before, when I interviewed an Olympic athlete, Stuart Hayes. He was in the 2012 triathlon GB team. But he said how he got into sport was because he had this excess energy, and basically his parents said, and he wasn't able to sleep, and it was a complete nightmare for his parents. So basically, they got him to do swimming. And so, were you that kind of kid? Did you have this kind of excess energy that you had to burn off?
I definitely have, and still to this day, don't like sitting still. I can get there. Like if I burn myself out, like I've had a long run or a crazy day, I'm okay with being on the couch. But I've always had this like, let's do something. Let's go outside and explore. Let's go run on the beach. Let's go look for shells. I grew up on a small beach town called Cayucos in California. It's teeny tiny, like maybe 11 or 1,000 to 1,500 people. And what my mom would always, and I would always do is go look for shells. We were always walking. We were always biking somewhere. We were doing something. So I don't think I was like an Energizer Bunny level.
Right.
But like you mentioned before with the Olympic athlete you referenced, but I was just the kid who was, you weren't going to put a book in my hand or like a show on the TV and I was going to sit there. It was going to be, okay, I need to be stimulated by movement.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. And I suppose, did the weather help? I mean, was it kind of, I'm kind of stereotypical thinking that California is kind of, 52 weeks of the year, sunshine sort of thing. So you've got no excuse to be not going out.
Yeah, I definitely think there's part of the California lifestyle. I would, for folks who aren't familiar with like the California landscape, there's Northern California, which is, the San Francisco area. There's the Southern California, which is like the LA, the San Clemente, the San Diegos. Well, that's lower Southern California. And smack dab in the middle is the Central Coast. And that's where I'm from. So the weather was, cloudy, sunny. We had a little bit of a mix, but it wasn't anything where it was like pounding rain all the time or snowing or anything of that sort. I was very fortunate to have kind of the beach as my backyard and a mom who understood my passion for movement and kind of like, let's get her outside and do something. So,
were you an only child or do you have siblings?
So my mom she was a single parent for quite a bit.
Okay.
She had me at 22.
All right.
So it was just kind of her and I for a bit. And then she remarried or got married for the first time and had my brother when I was 10. So I'm the oldest sibling by 10 years. So I had a very special relationship with my mom.
Yeah.
So it was just her and I kind of exploring and doing things together. And then once my little brother entered the picture, I got to have a buddy to do stuff with. Like that was kind of my like
boss around
and go do stuff. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But to put it into perspective, at one point, I remember my mom put one of those exercise trampolines in my room so I could jump just because like I need, like you talk about the movement.
Yeah.
And so I would jump on the little trampoline with my brother and we were just kind of like going out and collecting bugs and dirt and plants. And we were always kind of exploring. But yes, only child for 10 years. And then my brother came in. Picture, it was awesome.
So before getting to the running, which is the object of the podcast. So you got into basketball. I mean, I played basketball when I was in senior school, or as you were high school. And it was one of the exercises, if not, I think it was very much down to, we had a really good coach who played at a national league level. And his enthusiasm, I think, really helped. But obviously, basketball in the States is very much at a different level. So how, going into the collegiate level, how did you feel about, sort of basketball at a college level?
Yeah, because I think a lot of college basketball comes from high school. Like there's definitely a difference in level, but the relationship and pass off between high school and college is so not sensitive, but it's such an interesting time. And so in high school, like I mentioned, my basketball coach in high school got to me, very passionate, oh, you're tall, let's turn into a weapon. And my closest friends played. So for me, it was just a no-brainer to play this sport. And I had an amazing coach, like not tiny, but shorter Italian man, like just this fire and passion for us to be the best versions of ourselves. And that's what he would tell us. I'm looking for you to be the best version by being 1% better every day. 1%. I don't need 20%. I need 1%. And we're here in a year. You're going to be 365% better. Like he was just like one of the greatest coaches I've ever had the opportunity to work with. And so he recognized that I had the ability to play in college. And I was a very humble player. Like I would get these accolades and, break records, but I was never cocky. I was never disrespectful. I never thought my shit didn't stink, excuse my French, but like I was very grounded. And so I wasn't even really doing much to further my career in regards, like you see players playing travel ball and submitting videotapes to these head coaches. I wasn't doing that because it was just a foreign concept to me. Like remember, tiny town, minimal people, you have a high school coach who's got this passion. And he actually sent videos to other head coaches on my behalf. I didn't know he was.
So were you
doing that.
Were you taken on a scholarship then?
I was, yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So I was taken on to a scholarship. And when you get to the D1 level, it's that decision is so you're 17, 18 and you have options. And I was fortunate enough to have options to play at Division I on scholarship. And I looked at D2 and I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. And we're going to do this to the full experience. So I, removed the D2 options. It was like, here's my D1. It was quite the process, but you're so young when you're handed this kind of like, okay, pick a school we're going to be for the next 4 years. And your parents can act as a guide, but it really comes down to, what's a major that you're interested in? What's things that are important to you as a player, right? Is it important to you to have really close camaraderie, or is it maybe more important to have a little bit less camaraderie, but it's a really cool academic opportunity? All of that comes into play. And so I ended up staying a bit closer to home and went to a Division I college called California Polytechnic State University. It's Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. A smaller D1 school that was, I think, perfect for me in regards to not knowing what I was getting myself into, to the intensity of what D1 sports is, because it's a business when you get Division I. It's no longer about like just the love of the game. It's how can we get people in the seats? How can we travel? Like how can it becomes a business? So that part was really tricky. 4 years of just kind of coming into that space and recognizing again that I had the physical ability and the grit and determination to be a really good player. So I was shooting 1,000 shots every day, getting up at 4 a.m. Cal Poly is also a polytechnic school. So it's academically difficult. So it was just all of the boxes of like, spiritual, mentally, physically, like all of my components of being a human were just overstimulated. And so I'm so fortunate for that experience and what it taught me about time management and hustle and figuring out like what matters and knowing how to say, hey, I need to slow down. So that way, when my 4 years was up, I was, first team all conference. Like I worked my ass off. I was on the dean's list, but I was so burnt out that I wasn't interested in pursuing
a professional career in the sport. Could you have done it? Could you have done that?
I had interests and offers from overseas coaches that wanted me to play professionally overseas.
Oh, right. Okay.
And to me, and I don't think every person's journey is like this. I think there's, if you have parents who've played over in Division I, or you have more of an understanding of how it's important to have that balance. Not everyone's experience is like this. But when I got to the end of my career in college, I was just like, I've given this sport everything that I have, and I'm ready to try something else. And it wasn't even that hard of a decision. It was just like, I've given this everything and I'm ready to move on. But I think it's not that easy for some. But yeah.
So moving on to running.
Yeah.
Is this
that's running?
Yeah. So did you come late onto the sport? So obviously, you left college, you maybe went to got onto the job market, big wide world sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so was it a case of that you wanted to, the stresses of working in the corporate environment, you felt then had to be another outlet, but you've worn the t-shirt when it comes to basketball and team sports or whatever, and you thought maybe there's something else. Is that the kind of the narrative?
It wasn't necessarily so. On my junior year of college, I have openly talk about this because I feel like it's something that isn't talked about enough, is I was like diagnosed with stress and anxiety. So I was put on medication to help manage that stress. And so since I finished, so that's junior year, I stayed on my anxiety medication. And I recognized once being done with basketball that I really liked the movement. Take the ball away, take the pressure of the stats, take all of that away. I liked the feeling like going back to being a kid. I liked moving my body. And so I graduated in 2017. I did a little bit of running, nothing like serious, like a 2-mile run around my neighborhood just to move. And then I would go box at like a boxing gym.
Yeah.
And then I would go swim or surf. But it wasn't until COVID, actually, when all of the gyms had shut down, where it's like, okay, we know the importance of movement for my mental health. All right, let's lace up the shoes and see what happens. Let's go for, maybe a 4-mile run and then a 6-mile run. It was kind of that organic process of like, once you get past, I think there's the first couple months of when you start running for the first time where like every step is painful.
Yeah.
There's that transition period. But really, I think with maybe a lot of other runners is COVID not necessarily forced me. I think I probably would have found the sport a different way, just maybe a little bit later. It really allowed me the time and the space to try something new, which was running, because you had no other options, really.
Yeah. Because I listened to the one of your podcasts about it's just you talking about tips for new runners, and I thought sort of one of the points that kind of resonated was the fact that you initially thought, well, people are going to be looking at me and thinking I'm a bit awkward, and this tall girl running along and whatever. But at the end of the day, you sort of seem to think, well, no, they're wrapped up in their own problems, sort of thing. And I thought that was quite interesting. And why would they be looking at me?
Yeah, I think anytime you try something new, it's like, God, like this isn't normal. Like you're in your head about it already.
Yeah.
It's different. Anytime something is different or new, you're going to be a little bit more uncomfortable. And it was just like, well, there's always that uncomfortability for a short amount of time. But think about what the payoff can be. My mom was a big person in that. She was like, don't negate the potential for the small amount of time that you could be uncomfortable. Don't not do something for this tiny window amount of time where you're going to not like it, because it could completely eliminate what could have happened, if that made sense. So she was someone who always taught me that. But yeah, 6'2", blonde chick, gangly, running along, like probably looking awkward. Like I'm used to there being a ball in my hand. And I was just like, holy crap, people are probably staring. And then at some point I was just like, and I just stopped caring, because people are just in their own little world.
Yeah.
They'll notice you, sure, but they're like, you're in and out, you're in one ear and out the other. It doesn't stick.
Yeah. So those initial sort of baby steps, or you getting into running, was it, what was the frequency like? Were you thinking, once, twice a week, or did you kind of think, I'm going to really make a go of this?
Yeah, it wasn't probably until like 2021, 2022, where it's like, oh, like there's races and stuff to do. It was still in 2020, like that first, I think lockdown happened in California in March, and that's when all of the gym closed. And I actually lost my job. The entire company I was working for, like, laid off a lot of people. And so I had all this free time. And so I made it a thing every day where I think my variable was 2 miles to 4 miles. And then I would go surf.
Yeah.
I lived right by the beach in LA. I moved to LA at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just, I'd probably say 3 to 4 times a week I would be running, and then I would do some sort of HIIT workout. But I never right away put pressure on myself that it needed to be a performance. It was just, I'm going to do this for my mind. And that was really the core of why I love running still today, I think, and moving. It was just, how can we,
is it because you had the time more than, because I know, I had the time then to do, go 4 times a week and do a 10K running program or something like that. But it was, because I could go at any time of the day.
Let's take a quick break.
Hi, Brian and Brian's Run Board listeners. I'm Merrily, author of Just Run. Just Run is the perfect gift for every runner or anyone thinking about starting running in 2025. In my book, I share my journey from barely hitting 3,000 steps a day to becoming an ultra runner in just a few years. A few months ago, I completed my first 100-mile race. Just Run is packed with practical tips for beginner runners. Running is for everyone. You don't have to be fast to go far. You just need to run your own way. That's what Just Run is all about. You can grab your copy on Amazon, including on Kindle Unlimited, or get a signed copy from my website, merrilyruns.co.uk. Feel free to reach out to me on my website or through my socials at merrilyruns.
Hey, this is Andrea, popping up from Sydney, Australia to say hello and to thank Brian for creating a forum which is so beneficial for those of us who are seeking a richer experience of running. If you're like me, you probably run for a host of reasons. These might include time alone, mental health, personal accomplishments, or maybe reclaiming a sense of self, possibly for the first time in a long time. And you might have noticed that the narrative around running is also changing. Until recent years, you probably mostly heard it talked about through the lens of metrics, things like getting faster, getting stronger, getting thinner, getting better, getting a spot on the podium. But thanks to voices like Brian's, more and more we're starting to think about running as a means to becoming a better person, to enjoying the morning, to achieving a fundraising goal, or maybe just making yourself proud. And if that sounds like you and you're interested in getting some coaching support for whatever your running journey looks like, I invite you to take a look at Run with the Slow Coach. I host a global coaching community for older, slower, bigger, injured, and back-of-the-pack runners. I'm fully accredited through Athletics Australia. I'm endorsed by the Australian Trail and Ultra Runners Association. And in 2023, I won a local business award for the most outstanding fitness service. I coach online and I promise to keep you accountable because I know what it takes to start a running journey, especially if you're not talented or you haven't been active your whole life. And I believe that runners like us deserve all the science, all the rigor, all the empathy, and especially all the support to safely progress to whatever your finish line looks like. And I'm really here for that. So find out more by following me on socials at Run with the Slow Coach or visit runwiththeslowcoach.com. I really am passionate about the life-changing benefits of being active, and I'm grateful to Brian for everything he does in this space. And now, back to you. Thanks so much.
It wasn't necessarily the time, because fast forward to now, I have a full-time job, a podcast, and I still make the time to train for a 100-mile or a marathon.
Yeah.
To me, you make time for what's important to you. So I don't think it was necessarily the time. It was just like I would have still ran if I would have had a job. I probably wouldn't have ran, surfed for 2 hours, done a HIIT, come back and applied for jobs. I probably wouldn't have had the more. And that was probably the only 2 months of my life where I didn't have some sort of like corporate structure. And so that was my way of creating my own routine and structure of just, we're going to run 2-3 miles, 4 miles every day. We'll surf and then but again, there was no program. There was just, let's just lace up our shoes and go run on the boardwalk. And that's pretty much what it was for maybe 6-7 months. Yeah.
And what did running teach you at that stage? I mean, obviously,
it taught me a lot. It taught me that and something that I still say to this day, you're capable of a lot more than you give yourself credit for. Because I came from such a background of sports that involved a ball. There wasn't just running, there was a distraction. Running was punishment.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a mental switch of like, no, we're doing this because we're going to try something new. And so never being afraid to try something new, regardless how old you are or how you might feel that you look different than other runners. Usually runners are a bit shorter. There's a bit more of a body type for running. I don't think I fit that body type.
Yeah.
And I learned to not care. And then something that I still talk about too is when you hit I'm going to try to run 3 miles today, and you hit that goal, and then you set another one, I'm going to run 4 miles today, and you hit that goal. That level of goal accomplishment transpires to other parts of your life.
Good. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you think about like, oh, I could push myself maybe professionally, or maybe I could how else can I challenge myself and see what I'm capable of? It translates to other components of your life. And that's a really cool perspective to start to see. And so that's kind of the beginning of why I started to really like running, because I could see it bleed into other areas of it affecting my life.
Did you follow a particular program, or did you, did you do, let's say, like a long run at the weekend, or did you do any kind of specific types of training?
Mm-hmm. It wasn't until 2021 that I signed up for my first race, which was a half marathon.
Right.
I guess 2021. I think it was actually 2022. 2022 was my first half marathon that I signed up for. And that entire year and a half was just purely, a good 6 miler. You want to have smaller speed work. I knew like the benefit of a speed workout, because you start asking friends, you start looking up things online. Yeah. So you start researching of like, okay, like if I have a half marathon, how should I prepare? You start to do stuff like that. But it's crazy. I never actually thought about it this way. I never did a program until a marathon, which I did in 2023 of March, LA. So before that training block, which I think was started in November of my half, no program, just, I have a half marathon that's 13.1 miles. Well, I'll run 10 miles 2 weeks out, because I think that's what you're supposed to do, right? You build and then you taper. So I did that.
Yeah.
But again, no program. And I think that was so helpful for me coming from basketball, where it was so like, we're doing practice at 5 a.m. We're doing strength training. We're doing one-on-ones. We're then going to like that level of structure was so much that I kind of needed to be able to fall into love with running organically and do it on my own.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you, just briefly going back onto the basketball thing, did you have many injuries there? Because I know it can be quite impact on these.
So I was,
and I'm just wondering whether the running either exacerbated any injuries that you did have.
Interesting enough. So I'm not sure if you're like, so I was a 5. So like when you think of basketball players, like I was the post, one of the bigger players at the key, the 2 blocks at the bottom.
Yeah.
But I wasn't your average 5. I was a runner 5. I wasn't going to run through you with my size. I was going to run around you with my speed.
Yeah.
So I was always fast for a 6'2" person. And so because my level of play was no 5 could catch me. So I had a lot of transition breaks. I had a lot of quick movements. My Achilles did get a lot of, my left Achilles got a lot of, by my senior year, was in some pretty, some pain. And so it got to a point where I remember working with my trainer and just being like, when you're not playing and you're not in basketball shoes, you're in a boot. So I'd put this boot on.
Right.
And then when I'd play, I'd take it off and put my basketball shoes on, which probably wasn't great from like overall body composition, because like think about your hips move. And
you didn't have any insoles or anything like that?
I had What did
I know sometimes
know-
people put insoles so it doesn't put pressure on the Achilles, so your foot is kind of elevated a little bit. Or
Mhm. Honestly, what my trainers did, and I think it was worked. So
yeah,
they took like this thick foam
yeah,
and they shaved it down so that my heel was higher in my shoe.
yes,
So
yes, yeah,
less.
that's
So they
right.
put,
Yeah,
it wasn't like an insole where you get your foot shaped. It was just like, okay, we're gonna cut the back part of your foot. We're gonna use this, like they did it with like a butter knife or like a
all
bread
right,
knife,
yeah.
and like put it in there just to see if it worked. And I was like, it works, it helps. Don't change anything, don't touch anything. It's fine, this works.
Yeah.
Um,
But
so I did that.
and had that. Oh, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, did it in the running? Was it something the back of your mind, I have to be kind of aware of? And
Yes, but because of the slow, so I graduated in 2017, doing a little bit of running, a little bit of boxing. The Achilles came from overuse, not proper stretching, and just I was a starter. I played every game, 40 minutes. Our season was in November to March. So it just puts a lot of, and then we're training all year round. So anytime you dial that down, which a normal human will usually do, when you're done playing that level of sport, it immediately felt better. So just
right,
dialing down how much I was running, and then just being mindful as I have picked up, training for marathons, training for ultras and stuff like that, just finding shoes that have a proper heel drop, being mindful there, just being mindful and like noticing, oh, it feels a bit sore today. Maybe we do a little bit less miles and we do more stretching.
Hmm.
So I've always been kind of aware, but it hasn't been anything, knock on wood, where it's been a life altering injury. It's just like, okay, like if that's what I have to deal with is a little bit of a nagging Achilles every now and again, then that's okay with me.
And I see in your Insta, then you do quite a bit of running on the treadmill. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And you do like quite a bit of sort of strength work. So is that a 50-50? What's the sort of like the separation, of your workouts in the gym and then what you're doing running outside? So
Yeah. I would say the treadmill. So I usually use the treadmill for two things. One is if I don't have access to a track, and I want to do some speed work.
Yeah.
I have been pretty mindful of speed work since training for doing my 100-miler, coming straight from that, going into a marathon.
Yeah.
Speed work aggravates my Achilles. And so I've been a bit more mindful of speed work and letting it just my foot heal.
Yeah.
But I do use the treadmill for speed work. It's just way easier. The second thing is the incline, what you're talking about. And I'll even put on a 30 to 40 pound vest and, walk uphill for an hour to 2 hours. That recently came into the picture when I recognized when I was doing my 100-miler and 100K training. And that's a whole story in itself. I was really training for 100K. It was on the brink of being canceled. I signed up for a 24-hour ultra and then got a 100-miler out of it. But basically it was, let's get your body used to walking uphill with weight. That way, when you're in an ultra and you're speed walking with sticks, you're flying. And so I got it down to where I was doing a 14-minute hike up these hills in the mountains and being able to be fast because I was training with so much weight on my shoulders and on the treadmill for 1 to 2 hours. So it made me my body a lot stronger. Yeah, it was tough. It was you had to put yourself in mental space.
Well, exactly. I think you'll agree with me that Hannah's story is a real eye opener about how life changes can lead to amazing opportunities. Basketball gave her structure and discipline, but running gave her freedom and a clear mind. Through her journey, Hannah shows how running became a super important way to deal with mental health challenges, especially during the crazy COVID-19 lockdowns. As she went from being a small-town athlete to a college star and finally to a passionate runner, she's open about the mental health battles she faced and how running helped her out. You won't want to miss part 2 of this incredible interview next week. So for now, bye. And that's a wrap for another exhilarating episode of Brian's Run Pod. Thanks for tuning in, folks. As always, we've got you back with all things running, and next week, get ready for some more awesome beginner hints and tips to kickstart your running journey. Don't forget, you can now send me a message. Yep, you heard it right. Brian's Ron Pod has now become interactive with the audience. If you look at the top of the episode description, tap on send us a text message. You can now tell me what you think of the episode, or alternatively, what you would like covered. If you're lucky, I might even read them out on the podcast. Hey, if you want to keep up with all the latest updates, behind the scenes fun, and even some exclusive content, make sure to follow me on social media. We've also launched a shiny new Facebook page. Just simply search for Brian's Ron Pod and give us a like. And don't forget to hop over to Instagram, where you can catch all our visual adventures at Brian's Ron Pod. For those of you who love diving deep into the episodes, head over to our website, www.briansronpod.co.uk, and there you'll find some detailed show notes and handy chapter markers, making it easy to navigate through your favourite discussions. Please leave a review, as it will help others find this podcast. Music is by Happy Day by Stock Audio, not forgetting artwork by Alice Patterson, and also thank you to my producer, Anna Patterson. So, till next week, thanks again for listening.